Alright guys, let's look at the external and internal anatomy of the heart. So we're going to start with the external anatomy, and we're going to start with the structure right here called the anterior interventricular sulcus. So this structure is going to separate the right ventricle from the left ventricle over here. And the heart is a little bit twisted to the side. This is not a perfect anterior view. You would need to twist it around just a little bit more in the leftward direction. But you can see that this is the right ventricle here on this side. You've got the left ventricle over here, which means that above that you have the right atrium up here, and then you have the left atrium up here, and you'll be able to see a little bit better on the dorsal view. Now, coming off of the right atrium, we see there are two large vessels that are going to be used to bring blood into the heart. These are the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, so those dump blood into the right atrium. Coming out of the left ventricle, we have the aorta, which comes around and forms the aortic arch that you can see here. That will then branch off into many arteries and arterioles, which will all be used to deliver blood to the body and drop off oxygen and then pick up carbon dioxide from those cells. We can also see the pulmonary trunk. Now this is going to be coming out of the right ventricle. And you'll see that the pulmonary trunk will branch in two directions to form the pulmonary arteries. And these pulmonary arteries will carry blood to the lungs. Once the blood picks up oxygen at the lungs and drops off carbon dioxide, it will then return to the heart through these four pulmonary veins that you see here. There's the two right pulmonary veins and the two left. Those will dump that blood into the left ventricle, which will be over here. From there, blood goes down into the left atrium, and then from there blood goes down into the left ventricle and then comes up through the aorta to be delivered to the body. So that's the anterior view. Looking at the posterior view, you can see the aorta coming off the back here. You can see those pulmonary arteries a little bit better, superior and inferior vena cava as well. Again, we have the left ventricle on this side, so the left atrium would be up here. You would have the right atrium up here with the right ventricle on this side, and you can see that posterior interventricular sulcus as well. These small veins on the back, you can see, are going to be used to drain oxygen-poor blood from the heart. Those are colored in blue. And the red blood vessels are the blood vessels that are delivering blood to the muscle of the heart. So those red blood vessels, we have the coronary arteries are the major ones. And then the blue are going to be the cardiac veins. So we have a great cardiac vein. And those cardiac veins all merge together to form this coronary sinus in the back, which is also going to dump the oxygen-poor blood into the right atrium. Now you'll notice how small these coronary arteries actually are, which makes them very prone to blockages. So if people start to develop plaque inside of their arteries, sometimes that can block off those coronary arteries, which will prevent blood flow and oxygen delivery to the muscle of the heart, and that can lead to a heart attack. So making sure that we stay healthy and eat good healthy foods and exercise can help keep those coronary arteries nice and clear, and help clear any potential plaque buildup, prevent that from happening in the heart and prevent heart attack. We also see the base of the heart, that's the top portion up here, and then you have the apex is the portion that's a little bit smaller down at the bottom. You can see that on the posterior view as well. Now looking at the interior view, this is the inside of the heart. We can see the right atrium, this chamber here. This is the chamber that's going to receive blood that is coming in from the body. This is going to be oxygen-poor blood, which is why we have these vessels colored blue. Blood will never be blue in the body. They just color these vessels blue just to help you differentiate the ones that are carrying oxygen-poor blood from the ones that are carrying oxygen-rich blood. So deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium. And then down below the right atrium, we see the right ventricle, this large chamber down here. And separating those two, we can see the right AV valve. So this valve is, flimsy tissue. It looks like a flap. It's almost like the consistency of like a sheet of paper. And if it were not secured tightly, whenever the heart contracted and blood gets pushed up towards the top of the ventricle, it could cause this AV valve to flap open in the opposite direction. So we have these chordae tendineae, like little strings that are there to anchor that AV valve in place and to prevent it from opening up and allowing backflow of blood from the right ventricle into the right atrium. And you'll see this AV valve on this side as well. This is the left AV valve. These also have a second name. You can call the right AV valve the tricuspid valve. The left AV valve is also known as the bicuspid valve. Now, as blood travels down into the left atrium, then it will pass up into the pulmonary trunk, but first it has to pass through the pulmonary valve. So this pulmonary valve here is used to prevent backwards flow of blood as well. As soon as blood starts trying to flow backwards in this direction, down back into the ventricle, this valve will slam shut and prevent that backwards flow. You can also see an aortic semilunar valve on this left-hand side of the heart. So the left side, we've got our left atrium, left ventricle down here, left AV valve with the chordae tendineae, and we have our aortic semilunar valve. Now, coming out of the aortic semilunar valve, we have the largest artery in the body, which is the aorta. And you can see that that branches and forms many smaller arteries that are all going to be carrying blood towards the body to drop off oxygen and pick up carbon dioxide. All that oxygen-poor blood again comes into the right atrium, then down into the right ventricle, into the pulmonary trunk, which branches into the right and left pulmonary arteries. That blood then travels to the lungs, picks up oxygen, drops off carbon dioxide, and then comes back into the left atrium through the 4 pulmonary veins and starts that whole cycle over again. Now, when you're identifying the parts of the interior anatomy of the heart, and you're trying to tell the difference between the right and left ventricle, the first thing that I always tell students to do is to look at the walls of these ventricles. So here's my interventricular septum separating the 2 ventricles. I have an interatrial septum up here that you cannot see very well, separating 2 atria. But if you look on either side of those 2 ventricles, you'll see the wall of each one. And if you'll notice, the wall of the left ventricle is much, much thicker than the wall of the right ventricle. And that's because the left ventricle has to pump blood to the entire body, whereas the right ventricle only has to pump blood to the lungs. So it doesn't have to travel nearly as far, thus it does not need as much muscle in order to do that, unlike the left ventricle does. So if you have any questions about this anatomy, just let me know and I can help you out.